Hey, adjust. Hey, what's up, man? Let's do another video today. We are about to be reacting to the harsh truth race hustlers fear the most. This is a Thomas Sowell video. Y'all be on his wiener. So I be doing videos to react to him because I definitely respect the man's opinion. He's a seasoned economist. He understands what he's talking about to a degree. And I agree and disagree on certain things. Let me make sure this is clear at the very beginning of the video because I know you guys are going to be, you guys are going to have some powerful critiques because you ride Thomas Sowell's. I'm just playing. Well, no, I'm not playing. You do. But either which way, economists can be wrong and they can be right. Economics is a complicated thing to understand. And when implemented into a society, it can cause friction, problems, chaos. So there has to, when an economic idea or an economic theory is introduced into society, there has to be something beyond a reasonable doubt that can back it. Economics is complicated when it comes to anything being able to back it. We don't know truly if supply side economics works. We don't know truly if Keynesian economics works, but we do. It's weird. Like it's weird. It's a double-edged sword. Supply side economics can be effective if the principle is actually applied the way it's supposed to be applied. Keynesian economics can be effective. Keynesian economics has been used after almost every recession, depression, and it's literally moved us into a better place. But supply side economics can be effective if the businesses allow the money to trickle back down into the people. With all that being said, Thomas Sowell has an economic theory that's predicated on Milton Friedman. I know a lot about Thomas Sowell, guys. I'm diving into his writings. Some of the stuff I agree with, some of the stuff I don't. But today we're not going to talk about economics. Today we're going to talk about race hustlers. And I want to take something right off of what he says, right? Thomas Sowell said that a chess player is good at playing chess. Okay? A chess player is good at playing chess. So a chess player should stay in their lane. He's an economist. He's an economist / historian. My opinion, economists should stay in their lane too. We can debate economy, but when it comes to race, I don't think he's going to say anything here. It's going to change the tune on how people feel about anything when it comes to any of this. But doesn't matter, y'all. Let's hop right into it.
Slavery is a very big subject. I have in my home an entire bookcase of books about slavery in various parts of the world and various times of history. And the sad fact is...
Me as well, guys. I do. I've read a lot of books about slavery and the slavery that's happened across the world. And I know where he's going to go with it, but I'm going to wait to see, but I feel like I know where he's going to go with it. I'm going to write it down, okay? Everyone has been in slavery. And when he goes there, I'm going to go where I know most people like him who try to pander to white people to make them feel good. And just being honest, this is what he does. Like, well, there's also people who pander to black people to make black people feel good on this topic because there are things that we still can discuss. He goes, I'm going to show you where he panders to white people at. I'm going to show you. I wrote it down, what I'm thinking. I wrote it down. Let's go.
Is that slavery has been a universal institution for thousands of years, as far back as you can trace human history. And what we're looking at is if slavery is something that happened to one race of people in one country, when in fact the spread of it was around the world. In 1776.
Before he goes on, yes, slavery has been an enterprise around the entire world. But the transatlantic slave trade, what's specific about that is this slavery was where later on things came later on. It's not slavery. Slavery is part of the problem, but it's not slavery that's the full problem. It's the things that came later. Jim Crow, redlining, COINTELPRO, Black Code, laws that were put in place in order to prevent the people that were enslaved in order to go into society and have an effective relationship with society. There were rules. I mean, if you go watch the movie 42 if you can. I forgot his name, the baseball player. But if you go watch the movie, Number 42. Go watch the movie, like how he was treated just trying to get into the major leagues. There's multiple stories. You can watch many things on this. It's not about the slavery that was the problem. It's what happened after slavery that was the problem. And slavery was a problem. I know, because black people are going to jump my ass about that. Slavery was a problem, but it's what happened afterwards. Because if you were allowed back into society and able to conduct yourself in society properly, we wouldn't have the same arguments that we have in today. If the towns like Tulsa and Rosewood and those towns were burned to the ground, we'd have a different conversation today. We wouldn't be as angry as we are when it comes to certain things.
Which is when Adam Smith published The Wealth of Nations, as well as when the United States got started. He said that Western Europe is the only place in the world where there is no slavery. And even the Western Europeans had vast numbers of slaves in the Western Hemisphere, yes, but not in Western Europe itself. And so if you're going to have reparations for slavery, it's going to be the greatest transfer of wealth back and forth. And between and cross hauling, as they say in the railroads, because the number of whites, for example, who were enslaved in North Africa by the Barbary pirates exceeded the number of Africans enslaved in the United States and in the American colonies before that, put together.
This guy. I'm going to Google that. I'm going to research it. I've heard about it. I'm going to research it. He could be right. The part I'm saying, this guy, is they're not asking for reparations. It is somewhat because of slavery, but there's more than that. It's more than that. It's what I already said it. What happened after slavery? It's everything that came after slavery. They promised 40 acres and a mule. They were never given that. So many promises this country has made us that have never been answered, but it is what it is.
I know, but nobody is going to North Africa to ask for reparations because nobody is going to be fool enough to give it to them. Here we have intellectuals who can imagine a different history from the rest of the world, even though it's so similar to the rest of the world.
You know what's interesting about what he said too, because he knows that you white folks don't understand that in Africa, specifically southern and some parts of the northern side of Africa, there's a reason why there was apartheid that happened over there. So most of the wealth that is in Africa is with white people. So do they need reparations? Most of the wealth that is spread across South Africa is mostly with the white people because of the apartheid that happened there. So if there was a slavery that happened, in a sense, they got their reparations. In a sense, they did.
We have our own myth makers in the African American historical establishment. All the Egyptians look like Michael Jordan. All our people were black gods and kings. You know, we were not complicitous in the slave trade. There wouldn't be a slave trade. Africans sold other Africans to white people. That was the slave trade. That's the first thing we honestly have to admit. Remember the story of Livingston, Dr. Livingston? Sure. The reason that was so important is that almost no white men had penetrated the interior of Africa. What was there? No roads, snakes, mosquitoes, death, malaria, right? The white people were along the coast. It was black kingdoms like Queen Njinga's kingdom in Angola. What's now Angola? Ghana. Dahomey. They grew rich from the slave trade, selling other Africans. They would go and wage wars just to sell other black people to white people.
There's a book. It's Letters to a Tribe, right? It's Letters to the Tribes, right? Where it talks about this, right? It's not taken away from what blacks did. Absolutely. Absolutely. He's 1,000% right that blacks played a role in somewhat of the transatlantic slave trade. However, though, when you read these letters, it was letters to different tribes. It was letters to like the Igbos, and it was all different kinds of tribes that were in Africa, right? You guys can research this yourself. But there was letters where they were learning what was happening with the transatlantic slave trade. Like these people were being carried off into these distant lands, being slaughtered, being thrown over the boat. And when they started figuring these kind of things out, the rulers in these areas started trying to outlaw the slaves, any kind of slavery being transferred over to the Muslims or to the whites of that region, when they figured out the consequences of what was happening, to the point where even now today, Ghana specifically apologized for the transatlantic slave trade for the role that they played in it. Yeah, reparations is a hard ask. It is, because if we're gonna be 1,000% honest, who fucked over black people in the Western Hemisphere? Everyone did. Everyone did. Like, everyone did. So now what, right? Okay, so like, if it's not reparations, what do we do to help to right the wrong? Like, what do we do to right the wrong? Because we can't keep going on the trajectory we're going on now. Like, what do we do to right the wrong?
This is something we've been so ashamed about, we pretend that it's not true. It is the nasty, dirty secret of African American history. We are just as corrupt and despicable as any other people. And if we have the right to oppress, we will oppress just like the white man oppressed us. That is human nature. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is. And the only way to overcome that is to be honest about it. Admit the truth, and then all try to do better. As my main man, guy I admire so much, Cornel West, says, we're all recovering racists. We're all recovering racists.
Yeah. I don't disagree with anything he just said. I do think it's a way to take it away from what whites have done, though. It is. It's deflecting. Like a part of it is deflecting away from, if we're talking about the transatlantic slave trade and the atrocities that happened in the transatlantic slave trade, why do we need to talk about blacks who sold blacks in slavery? We can talk about that later. But let's talk about what we experienced over here. Let's talk about them putting black people on horses and tearing them limb from limb. Or let's talk about like the ill treatment where George Washington was ripping the teeth out of some of his slaves' mouths and putting them in his mouth. Let's talk about stuff like that. Let's talk about the atrocities that happened when they were here. We can talk about the ones in Africa too. Okay. No one like we can talk about that, but let's talk about some of the things that white people did. Like how about all after slavery? All the lynchings in the South that happened, the travel advisory warnings that blacks had to have, a paper pamphlet. It was I think it was called the green. I can't remember. It was called the green paper, or the green map, or something like that, where you had to know this is the town you can go in, this is the town you can't go in, and if the sun sets on you in this town, you might not make it out of here. Let's talk about it. You know what I mean? We'll talk about the transatlantic slave trade and the role that blacks played in it, but don't try to deny the reason why blacks are upset in this country through this. Like, this is what they do to try to deflect. Like, many people will jump in the comments and say, oh, you're a victim, whatever. It's not about being a victim. It's just telling the history. Why don't you want to learn the history? Why don't you want to learn the history? Why don't you want to know what your country has done and what they're capable of? How they carved their faces into the mountains of the land they stole? Why don't you want to learn what happened to the natives? Why don't you want to learn what happened to African people and why they're so upset? Why are they burning down, quote unquote, their own communities that they don't own? They don't own hardly anything in the community. We can go on all day about this, y'all. But I'm out. Peace.